Welcome, everyone, to episode 2 of the Gathering Around the Table podcast, where I am your host, Mel the Maneater.
And I'm your co-host, Lucas Leander.
And today we are gathering around the table to talk about another Universes Beyond set that is coming out in the future, which is the Final Fantasy X Magic the Gathering set.
Yes, this is, out of both of us, up my alley the most. You know, you like Final Fantasy, but I would even consider myself like an Omega fan of Final Fantasy. I just am a gamer.
Yes.
I love video games. Also, you can find me on YouTube at Lucas Leander because I make gaming related videos.
Yes.
And so, as you can tell, I'm excited for Final Fantasy X Magic the Gathering.
What was the most recent Final Fantasy game that you played?
The most recent one was Final Fantasy 16.
And you finished that whole game, right?
Yes, I played almost all the side quests, which towards the end of the game, I was like, ain't no way.
You're doing all of them, yeah.
But, yes. So I think there is a lot to pull from, and if the stuff I've been reading is true, they're going to pull from all the games.
That's a lot of games.
There has been 16 games, and I'm pretty sure it was 2 MMOs. So there is a lot of things that they can pull
Not
from.
to mention the new Final Fantasy game that is coming out in... When is that game coming out?
Oh, the remake.
Yes.
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Yes, and when's that coming out?
That comes out next year, I think February.
Okay.
And so yeah, I'm sure that's going to be super closely tied in. Final Fantasy VII is like it's the one. It's the one that made Final
Everyone
Fantasy...
knows who Cloud is.
Yes.
I mean, if you know anything about if you don't know much about Final Fantasy, but you know a little, it's probably because you know who Cloud is. He's like the most popular character aside from the Chocobo in Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
The Final Fantasy series. And, you know, I'm sure if there's a commander deck getting made, he instantly gets a commander spot.
And so I think that... So what I've heard is that there's going to be set boosters, play boosters.
It's going to be something more along the lines of how big the Lord of the Rings set was. Because we all know that there are... So what it seems like is there's kind of 2 versions of a Universes Beyond release. There's something a little bit more small and tame, like the Doctor Who and the Warhammer set, where... The Warhammer 40k set that happened last year in fall was 4 commander decks, and they had 2 different versions. There was the completely all foil commander deck, and then there was the normal commander deck for all 4 different commanders. And then for the Doctor Who, there was 4 commander decks, and then instead of alternate foil versions of each 4 commander decks, there was also collector boosters in that set. So it's pretty contained to more commander heavy set. And then there are set releases for Universes Beyond that are more along the lines of Lord of the Rings and the Baldur's Gate release.
Yes. Which
were, you know, like 4 commander decks or something like that, 4 to 2 commander decks, and then there were draft boosters, set boosters, collector boosters, a bundle. For Lord of the Rings, there was a starter pack set or whatever, a starter box, and of course the gift bundle, and there's just so many different products. And it seems like this Final Fantasy X Magic the Gathering set is going to be more along that Lord of the Rings line, but as we all know, or if you don't know by now, draft boosters and set boosters are becoming obsolete. They're kind of becoming one, and they're called play boosters.
Yes, play boosters.
And so by this time, that Final Fantasy set comes out, theoretically, there will not be set and draft boosters. It'll be play boosters.
Yes. And so it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. And with them going through all of the 16, well, there's... Yeah, I guess it's just
or is there
there's like I think it's like 13 part 1 and 13 part 2.
Oh, geez.
There is a lot.
And there are remakes.
And there are remakes. There's a ton to pull from. I think the best place to start off would be with the commander decks.
Yes.
I think that's the best place to start off with.
Yeah.
And I think we already nailed one.
But yeah, we already nailed Cloud. Final Fantasy VII, essentially... Yes. I think it gets its own commander deck. Yeah. It's so very popular. Mm-hmm. There's no universe in which I don't think that Cloud and FIFA and like that there's no way they don't get their own like condensed commander deck.
Honestly, I straight up think Final Fantasy VII is so popular. I think that it will take up 2 of the 4 slots.
Really?
I honestly think it would be Cloud and Sephiroth.
And Sephiroth, yeah.
It would straight up be them, and then you would have like Clive for Final Fantasy 16, and then like,
and then everyone else.
Then I don't know. I don't even know what you do there. Yeah, I guess the mashup set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
or
I
maybe
think,
Final Fantasy.
well, here's
15.
what I think could happen. I think it could be. I do think Cloud and everyone in that Final Fantasy VII. I think it does get its own commander deck. I don't think it takes up 2 slots. I think that. Much like we kind of talked about previously, I think it's gonna follow the same formula. That yes, Sephiroth is the other commander,
but it's all
bad guys.
Okay, yeah,
and so
that's
I think
better.
it's going to be all of the villains, from all of the Final Fantasy games.
Yeah.
But Sephiroth, he is the most notable villain from Final Fantasy. Everyone loves him. People simp over him.
Yeah.
It's going to be Sephiroth and Cloud as commanders, but I don't think that the other Sephiroth commander deck will be only condensed to Final Fantasy VII. I think it's going to be a lot of the villains and the baddies or whatever, the monsters, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I do think, I mean, and this is the game that I'm the most familiar with, just because I played some of it. I watched you play all of it. The Final Fantasy 16 definitely gets its own commander deck, and we have some heat ideas that we cannot wait. Yeah. So we're digging into it now. The Final Fantasy 16 commander deck with Clive as your commander, and possibly partnered with Joshua.
But I think before we go into that, I think we just need to give a little context, because right now we're so excited. We're like expecting people to know
what we're
any
talking
of this.
about.
But
so
there's fans that...
let's do a spoiler warning if you haven't played the game yet. If you are waiting to play Final Fantasy 16 or you haven't played it yet and you don't want the game to be spoiled for you, just skip probably a couple minutes ahead. Yes. We're going to spend probably a solid 5 minutes talking about this deck. Maybe I'll put a little blurb up above that gives the exact timestamp in which I'll give a timestamp in which I'm done talking about it, because we are probably going to spoil the heck out of this game for you. So please skip ahead. We are starting to talk about it now.
So,
okay.
You have Clive. This is the setup for the game. Clive is the main character. He has a brother named Joshua. And all the main characters basically in this world have, like, you want to think of them as, like, forces of nature in them. So Clive has a demon-looking fire elemental in him called Ifrit. Mm-hmm. And then another one might have like this...
The Phoenix.
A Phoenix, or it has like a dragon, or just like a Titan that like represents the earth. So they all have elementals in them. Like, that's the basis that you have to like... And they all have them inhabiting them. So they can literally turn into these, like,
gigantic elemental, like, beings.
And by doing it too much, they can eventually die. But,
that's
a whole different thing. So now you have, like, basically that's the main groundwork for the game itself.
Yes. And so one thing, and this is, again, like, something that's kind of a spoiler, is that Joshua, goes around and... No, not Joshua, sorry. Clive... essentially becomes like the avatar of all of the elementals in Final Fantasy 16.
The Avatar or the Naruto
He acquires like every single elemental. He turns into every single one of them at some point in the game.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't turn into them, but he has their powers.
Or sorry, he has their powers. He doesn't turn into them, but he has like their traits or whatever, like their like his little superpower that he gets from, harnessing, absorbing one of them.
So you guys already know where we're going with this. If you're a Magic player, you know where we're going with this. We're going with like some Voltron. You make Clive stacked with cards.
So kind of like enchantment auras. Like, I'm thinking...
No, okay.
So, like, okay, well, or, like, like, when you put an enchantment aura on, like, it just keeps adding. Like, or it could be... I don't know, because I think it'd be more of an aura, because I don't think equipment quite fits.
But I don't think either one of those.
Okay, which one?
This one I'm talking about. Okay, so you have Clive. You play Clive.
Yeah.
In the deck, the whole deck is about getting the people, called the icons. Mm-hmm. You are trying to get the icon cards. So you're trying to play the dude... that you fight that he's like Titan. He's the Titan, right? You're trying to get the dude who has the dragon, right? And so when they come onto the battlefield, right, they have whatever effect. But their sub effect is that they make Clive stronger.
Yes.
And so when Clive's on the battlefield, not only do you get them as a strong card, they buff Clive. And then there might be a thing where it's like when you have all the buffs, something like Clive like,
which is a lot of them, by the way. That would be something not easy to pull off.
Yes, there's a lot. There's like,
what if it was something along the lines of like creatures who share a creature type with your commander, or your commander has like anything that shares a creature type with your commander, like your commander gets that ability, and they're all called like creature icons.
That's so good. Yeah, no,
and so because that is a bit more specific, because it wouldn't make sense for like, oh, your commander has all abilities of creatures on your battlefield. Like, no, it needs to be specifically the creature icons.
The creature icons.
And so creatures that share a creature type with your commander, you know what I'm trying to say.
A creature who is basically would say on Clive's thing,
your commander gets the ability of creatures you control that share a creature type with your commander, basically.
Yes. And it would just be icon.
And they would be the creature icon.
Yeah.
And I also think it would be an interesting thing if it only did that. So this is kind of add another layer to it. So you have all these characters that have these icons in them. And I think it would be interesting. So when they're the character, when they're just like their normal human self, Clive gets whatever minor boost in ability. But if you flip them, Clive no longer gets that ability, and then they turn into the icon.
Ooh, yeah, I like that. So it's like you have the choice. You keep them how they're all flip cards.
Yeah.
You keep them how they are.
In their human form.
And they're buffing Clive. Or you flip them and they become very strong, but Clive loses the buff.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on how you want to play the deck. Do you want your commander to be honestly dummy strong?
Yeah.
Or do you want to have a lot of creatures that you can flip to become incredibly stompy?
Yeah.
And so I do think that would add like variety.
Yes.
And also give people just more options on how they would want to play a deck like that.
And eventually you could flip Clive, like, just think about it this way. If you do manage to get all these other icon cards, and then you flip Clive, and he transforms, he's getting all the buffs, and he's big and stompy, and right? So that's the main game plan, to get to the point where Clive's just, like, basically this unstoppable, and he's the commander, and he just, like, one-shots everybody. Yes. Right?
There's also another thing that this is, again, more spoilers, but if you're still listening, I told you to scroll ahead. So Joshua and Clive combine to create this insane icon.
Where he has the powers of both fire icons. So he has the Phoenix, and he has, like, this, Ifrit. Like, fire demon Ifrit.
They combine. And they're brothers. And so, I think it was Dominaria United.
Yeah.
That there were cards that if you got them both together, they like melded.
Yeah.
And I think that was Dominaria United, where like you meld cards. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And you melded cards together and created this like one giga card.
Yeah.
And I think melding Joshua and Clive, and like that would be such a huge flavor like win for Final Fantasy 16 people if they could be like, if Joshua and Clive were your partnered commanders, and if you were able to transform them both, you could meld them together, and the backs of their cards made, like, I don't know, maybe somehow they made the combined like version of them, or just both of them, and then maybe you have a token. So, like, when you combine them, you get a token that comes with the commander deck that is their combined
I see what you're saying.
Icon.
And so, okay, I think, because I'm trying to think of all the flip stuff.
I know.
We need, like, a third dimension of flipping for these cards.
You flip this and then flip this, you put them together, and then you get something else.
Yeah, I think a token would be nice. This is my only issue with our idea. Our idea is sick. It's only sick if you keep the commander deck how it is.
This is true.
And so I know, Magic, part of it is they know, they want the casual people out there, and just everyone, to be able to buy these really fun commanders, but they also want you to be able to be like, you know what? I don't like the main commander. Let me switch that with a different commander. Oh, I love Clive, but I want them to build him out in a different way. Oh, I love this icon. I want to build him out in a different way. But if all the icons, they need to have their abilities that, yes, support Clive, but do their own thing, or they're not going to be good cards or commanders on their own, and the deck's going to feel like it's literally this thing that needs to just, like, play with itself.
Yeah.
Like, it just needs to, like, keep all the cards need to stay within itself.
Well, and that's the issue of kind of like, so there's what we're talking about where you're paying giga homage to the people who've played this game and love this game. And then there's also the other token, which I've complained about it before, of making cards too specific. So when you have to interact with them in a game of Commander, and you're bringing like, something that's, Magic original, like something from Dominaria United, or just like an in the universe Magic set, something that's a bit more normal to Magic abilities, it can be a bit confusing and sometimes frustrating to interact with.
It's like, even think about Meld. How many Meld cards are there?
Not a lot.
Barely any Meld cards. And so that means that if you meet a Meld card, you're going to be like, how does this work? You're going to be very curious about like how it works and kind of cautious, and it can make the game like
But it also makes me think about like time counters in Doctor Who.
That's true.
You know, like it's not
that confused the hell out of me.
A lot of people were confused by the time travel and like the time counters.
Are these stun counters? Are like I was.
And the issue is that like they kind of were, but they did function differently, and they were called something different. Yeah. They're inherently a different counter than a stun counter or something like that. And so I do think it does bring up the question of, is our idea cool enough to warrant a completely different kind of mechanic? Not a completely different mechanic, but something that is a bit more specific. There aren't any creature icon cards to date, so it's not like you can put more in the deck. But maybe there's something that you can do to have it be like, or maybe it could be like, you make it a legendary creature deck. And Clive gets all of the abilities of legendary creatures on the battlefield. Yeah. And that does allow for more flexibility in that deck if you were like, you know what, I don't want this icon card, I don't want this one, I'm going to replace it with these legendaries from some other Magic set, Somehow they have to figure out how to make him have like one ability, but it grows somehow. I think that's the key with Clive, because that's the whole game, like, basis of the game is that he's strong by himself, but then he just keeps getting stronger as he gets more powers. Yeah. And so I think that's key. I think there's just a lot of ways we could simplify this deck if it was just like, it was just more about flipping cards. It was just like all the icons. That would just be more simple.
You flip them and you're just trying to get them all to the icon state. I think like that's another way you could do it. Yeah. I think that like with the Joshua thing, instead of Meld, you could just have like an enchantment that's like Phoenix's Wings, and then it does whatever, like it gives creature flying and +2/+2. Yeah. But then if attached to an icon,
it's like even more.
Then it has
+3/+3. Yeah.
+3/+3 in haste or something, right? And so there's ways of like doing a lot of cool things that keep it simple and keep it more versatile. And
keep it within the mechanics that already exist.
And so I think that's the key, when you adapt video games, it can be very tempting. Like, let's say with Assassin's Creed. It's a wall of assassination. Let's do all these cards that like instantly kill other cards. That is powerful. That is removal. You can play creatures, you get them, and they remove things. Yeah. That would be very powerful. So you have to be careful about like how specific you make new mechanics. Yes. Yeah.
And that's like that balance we were talking about between paying homage and then also, being mindful of the mechanics that the hundreds of mechanics that already exist in the game. Mm-hmm. But moving on to another commander deck idea, I think it would be this is the silly haha commander player in me. Okay. I'm like, I want a chocobo tribal would it be?
Top 10 things we want with chocobo
okay, maybe not that. But like, what if there was a deck that was more surrounded around like, there's a lot of like fun like creatures in Final Fantasy, and I think that maybe a deck surrounded around just token creature creation, not necessarily
chocobo vehicle card. That'd be pretty good.
Okay, but we have to talk about the dog.
Oh, Torgal.
Yeah.
Yeah, Torgal.
Torgal, he needs to get the best card ever.
Yeah, he definitely needs to be in there. I think, honestly, all the creatures of Final Fantasy, whether it be like the little cactus dude, or chocobos, or like, what's his name? Behemoth? I forget his name. I think that they're just going to be interspersed throughout all the decks.
Yeah.
And I think that'll be fine. That'll be fun. I think this kind of nails what is the most exciting about like big franchises. Like we talked about Marvel in the last episode and Final Fantasy with this episode. There's so much to pull from. The fact that Final Fantasy used to be a turn-based, for most of its life, was a turn-based game.
Yeah.
Magic is a turn-based game. There is so many references with spells and actions and different things that you can put on there. With the lands, there are so many different worlds that you can...
Oh man, the lands for this set are going to be beautiful.
It's going to be awesome. There's so many different, obviously, characters and creature types and all those different things. And then, like, specific moments, like spoilers for Final Fantasy VII. When Sephiroth kills Tifa. That is... Or not Tifa, sorry. Aerith. Everyone's like, you know what? You don't know anything about Final Fantasy. Kills Aerith. That is, like... huge. And so I just think there is so much to pull from for Final Fantasy.
And like you're saying, those emotional moments to pull from. So it's something we also touched on in our previous episode where we touched on like emotional moments in like the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
And I think that Final Fantasy gets dark.
Oh,
there are, I think, a lot of those that could be pulled from.
Yeah. I definitely there is a good amount of like dark moments. But
there's also a lot of funny moments that I feel like could be pulled from. Like I remember
the dancing?
Huh?
The dancing or what?
Like the one with the bees?
Yes, the bees and the dancing in the club.
He played the Final Fantasy VII remake. And I remember I walked in on this part where like there's all the bees dancing and it's like kind of weirdly,
and they're like all like
smexy, and I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah, there's so many funny moments. Those games, Final Fantasy 16 is a lot more dark, and the previous games do have some dark moments, but for the most part they try to make it like a good. There's more lighthearted than there is like dark moments. Yes. Like there may be a lot of serious moments, but there's not a lot of dark moments, and so there's a lot to pull from.
And I think that's one of the things that makes Final Fantasy so special is because they have that polarity.
Yeah,
that series has that polarity of very funny, this is as silly as you could possibly get, to I'm crying, screaming, throwing up, what's happening, you know?
I feel like, there's certain things that make certain Universes Beyond sets so exciting. And like I was thinking about this recently. I was like, what makes a good Universes Beyond set?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why to me does Warhammer work so well, but Doctor Who only kind of works and Assassin's Creed doesn't work at all? Why is it? Is it just how large the franchise is? But I don't think it's that.
Yeah.
Warhammer is also a tabletop game.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
Lord of the Rings, it's like the most fantasy thing you can get.
Yes.
Right? Final Fantasy, it's fantasy.
Fantasy in the name.
And it was a turn-based game. It was a turn-based game. When you think about Marvel, it's the art. It's like the fact that comic books, like, I feel like a lot of times it's like there's one thing that you're like, this would be really cool in Magic.
Mm-hmm.
That would be really cool. And I think 2025 is when these come out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think both Marvel and Final Fantasy do that.
Yeah, I agree. I also like it because some people, and I can totally understand this, I've had my reservations about certain Universes Beyond sets as well.
Yeah.
And like personally, I know a lot of people are excited for it. I've never played Fallout in my life. I've also just never been that interested in Fallout, but that's a personal thing.
Yeah.
And so I know a lot of people are excited for the Fallout X Magic the Gathering set. Personally, I am not. It has nothing to do about the quality of the cards or anything like that. They're going to do an amazing job, but it just doesn't hit for me. But what I really like that they're doing is that, no, not everything's going to be a hit.
Yeah.
But they're really trying to pull in as many new players to Magic as possible by hitting all these We have a friend, our best friend Billy, who is in love with Final Fantasy.
100 million times more informed and loved Final Fantasy than me.
If he didn't live so far away, he would be sitting right here.
We probably will, when it gets closer, make another podcast. And
with him.
He will be here for that.
He will be our Final Fantasy expert.
Yes. Oh man, that'd be awesome.
Because the fact that he's played Magic with us before, but he's not as enthralled in the game as we clearly are. And when we were talking to him the other day, we were like, "Hey, yo, dude, there's gonna be a Final Fantasy set," and he was like, I might have to buy all those cards.
Yeah, no, he was
like, that's what Universes Beyond can do for people.
Yeah.
You know? And so I do think that is very special. And, you know, for people who do like Fallout, that will be very special.
I just can't. We'll make an episode about Fallout. We'll make an episode about Assassin's Creed, so I won't go too hard on this, but I don't understand Fallout, guys. I don't understand this. Like, you have Elder Scrolls / Skyrim, like, a world that is fantasy that works way more perfectly and is honestly, I think, a more iconic and popular franchise, and you went with Fallout?
I know.
You went with Fallout?
And that's what I've heard from other people, is it's like, you are working with Bethesda.
Yeah.
And you had the options between Fallout, the Skyrim, Oblivion, Elder Scrolls,
and
everything,
even Starfield.
And Starfield. That was what shocked me.
Yeah.
I was like they didn't even want to like be like, let's get Starfield more, because Starfield just came out, and you know that's like their pride and joy right now.
Yeah.
Why go back to Fallout? You know, because, and to me, and again, it is a logical, like, for me. And for us, it's like, well, Skyrim is so high fan. Like, why would it's got dragons? It's got like how cool would a Fus Ra Da card be?
Yeah.
You know, like there's so many things in there, and then we'll fall out, and it's a little confusing.
Yeah, and then when it comes to Assassin's Creed, it's like a set. There is like, now they kind of try to push like some magic-y things in Assassin's Creed, but there really is no magic in Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
And like, so it's not like fantasy, it's not sci-fi, it's not, the game doesn't connect really in any way. There is like no real connecting thread to magic in the least bit. And that's the only thing that I personally am like, I want from Universes Beyond. There needs to be
I like feeling like a connection.
Thread or something that I feel like, okay, it kind of works within Magic.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to be like, we're going to have we're going to start doing sets of Magic that are like based on periods of time history. This is now the samurai set. There's no magic. It's just about samurais in feudal Japan. Like that. Why are we doing this right now?
Yeah, it definitely is a little interesting having Assassin's Creed as a set. But we can touch on all of that in another podcast and talk about our gripes or basically, whatever.
This was all just to say Final Fantasy to us works well.
Yes. I think that it's a set that, you know, a lot of people look forward to. And, you know, people who are into Magic and people who are not yet into Magic. And I do hope that, you know, like, I think for a lot of people, Magic the Gathering, they don't get into it just because it seems like this kind of big, intimidating beast. And a lot of people ask themselves the question, especially if they play video games, of why would I play a card game when I have this, you know, all these video games that I spent copious amounts of money on, you know, and a whole console and everything like that, or a PC build. And so a lot of people just need to kind of like cross that threshold of like, oh, but it has something in there that I could relate to, you know? And so maybe someone who has no connection with the game, they might not just hop into it for no reason. Yeah. I'm sure there might be some people, but not a lot. But for us, like our friend Billy, who was like mildly interested in Magic, this set is like, we know we're playing a game of Commander with him when the set comes out. Like,
you have to admit, like, doing these Universes Beyond sets sometimes is the only way to pull new fans. Do I like that they're milking it so much? No. But it is sometimes the only way to get certain fan bases of people, and they're playing it, then they go, oh, I actually like this, and then eventually they just go, oh, I just want to play this. Or they just keep playing, but at least they're playing now with those decks.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that's the only way. It's just like if you love Magic, right? You love Magic, you only want to play Magic, but you don't really play video games, right? Mm-hmm. How would you get into video games? Imagine there was a story-based third-person action game where you're a Johnny and you're going through this open world, and it's like God of War level storytelling and gameplay, and it's amazing, and everyone's giving it 9 out of 10s, and it's this crazy game. A lot of people who don't usually play video games and only play Magic will try that game out.
Yeah.
Because
also, vice versa, if a game like that came out, people who play video games would play it and then probably inadvertently be like, I'm going to try playing Magic now because I want to feel like I was a part of where this came from.
Exactly. Like, if you like the Warhammer cards, which I love the Warhammer cards, I thought those decks were I thought they were fantastic. Super fun decks. It made me more interested in Warhammer.
Yeah, we are now actively slowly but surely getting into Warhammer. And that might maybe start sporadically, Warhammer related things might start popping up on my channel in the future.
Yeah.
Because we kind of are going off the deep end. Yeah. With that, and I do think that was started from the Warhammer set. So like, it's funny, like a Universes Beyond set is meant to get people from outside of Magic into Magic, and also inadvertently gets people into Magic into outside things, because it definitely is mutually beneficial for both parties involved, the Magic the Gathering and then the Universe Beyond.
Yeah, it definitely does exactly what it intends to do. It just needs to be smartly done. I'm looking at you, Fallout sets. Like, we just need to do this smartly. And so, yeah, I'm super excited for Final Fantasy. There is so much to pull from. We don't need to rant about it for too long, because when we get more information, this is a weekly podcast, guys. We will be talking about it.
We'll be talking about the cards. We'll
get Billy on, who knows about all the Final Fantasy games.
Yeah. I'm really excited for this set, but again, it's not coming out for 2 years.
Yeah.
So we have some time.
Yes.
And I'm really looking forward to seeing the specific cards, also the specific mechanics that they decide to use. And I'm really looking forward to be able to talk about it in a more real way. But obviously, like we mentioned in the last podcast, one of my favorite things to say is what if. And so I had to have a podcast that's a what if podcast. Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts before we close out?
Final thoughts is just I'm super excited for this. This is something I'm like, it genuinely made me, like, when I heard about the Lord of the Rings thing, I was like genuinely so happy, and this made me genuinely so happy. And my final thought is just keep doing this, keep making things that feel in some way like they fit into Magic, and I will be happy.
Yes, and I think that it makes everyone happy. Yes. You know, people who are interested in Final Fantasy and people who already love and cherish Magic the Gathering as a card game by itself. And I think that's all we have for this podcast. Yeah. Please subscribe to my Mel the Maneater channel if you like anything we're talking about, or if you want to learn more about Magic the Gathering and want to support me supporting you guys. And also, please go give Lucas Leander a follow. Is it the Lucas Leander, or
if you just look up Lucas Leander on YouTube,
it should be like the first thing that pops up. If you look him up, it's currently, and it might change, it's currently a picture of Poe from Kung Fu Panda as his profile picture.
My page is my face, so look out for either of those two things. And tune in next week, because I'm sure we'll probably be talking about, I'm guessing, Ixalan. That's like the
Yes,
thing.
We're going to be talking about Ixalan in the next podcast, so please stay tuned for that, because I am super excited to dig into this fantastic set. I cannot wait to talk about it. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you guys in the next episode of the Gathering Around the Table podcast. Bye!